Good morning, everyone. It's Adrian on a beautiful summer's day. Today, I want to talk to you about two questions that GCSE English students have to manage in their assessments all the time. And the one that we're going to look at today is, well, there are two questions, and they're both pretty much the same, but the information given is slightly different, although the outcome can still be the same. So there's question 2 in AQA language paper 1, and there's question 3 in language paper 2, and both of them are with the phrase, how does the writer use language to describe whatever it is? So what I want to do is just show you the type of questions that come up, and then try to create a structured approach in answering the questions that students need to do. I often, when I'm talking with my own students, I often find it's very important to explain to them they must look at things in detail, but also not jump around a text. So what I've got in front of you here is a June 2017 paper, and it's part of an extract. And in question 2 in paper 1, you actually do get this insert, and then you get the question that follows. So you get a small number of lines. So it says from lines 6 to 14 of the source. It says look in detail at this extract. So it's an extract within an extract. And then here is the question that is the all-important question. How does the writer use language here? But so that is always going to be the same. How does the writer use language here to describe? You'll get that phrase all the time. But it is important to make sure that you understand that part, but then the second part is a bit more detail. So in this case, it says, how does the writer use language to describe Rosabel's bus journey home? So it's a bit more specific there. And I think it's always important to differentiate the question from the start. And then this bit is quite amusing. I often, when I'm taking year 8 going into year 9, I have to explain that this next phrase is a little bit of a trap, to be honest. It says you could include the writer's choice of, and then it gives bullet points, words and phrases, language features and techniques, and sentence forms. Now that word could, look, let's be honest with this, get rid of that. You must. I mean, if you're being given advice, you're going to include some of the bullet points. If you just say, well, I don't think I will, I'll just do it my own way, then it may be a problem. So be warned on that. So how do we go about it? So it says bus journey home. So the first thing you do is when you do any question in GCSE, you need to focus I believe in a chronological way, because when you read a text, we gain more information as the story progresses. So if we look at this one and we suddenly say, I'm going to go straight to this, resolve into one meaningless staring face, and use that as my first example, I'm going to be all over the place. So my feeling is, if we look at a question, we do, first of all, work in a chronological way and read the whole extract very carefully. So it says about the bus journey home. So she's obviously on the bus at this point, because it said Rosabel looked out of the windows. So, you see the street was blurred and misty. Well, that gives an impression of a bit of a miserable day. So I suppose you could say that was a pathetic fallacy that the writer is using. So that's a language technique. And it sets a kind of a miserable mood. Then it moves on. It says, but light striking on the panes turned their dullness to opal and silver. Well, they're sort of jewelry references. So they're looking at light on the window panes, and the jewelers' shops that the light hits, seen through this, were fairy palaces. Well, we know that the jeweller's shop is not a fairy palace, so that is probably a metaphor. And then it talks about the conditions that she's in. Her feet were horribly wet, and she knew the bottom of her skirt and petticoat would be coated with black, greasy mud. So quite a descriptive lot of emphasis there. Black can be always a connotation of evil, darkness, and greasy mud. You know, it's not just mud, it's greasy mud. So the adjective greasy is adding value to the horrible situation she is in, conditions. And then there was a sickening smell, so we got some alliteration there of warm humanity. That's kind of almost an oxymoron. Sickening smell of warm humanity. On one hand, it gives a terrible phrase followed by quite a positive one. Warm humanity. Think about cold humanity. Could be the people are very unlikable. Warm humanity could be also a reference, and possibly a reference to the conditions in there, that the warm humanity is actually body odor, and it goes on to give a bit further information. It seemed to be oozing. Oozing is a very interesting verb. It is usually synonymous with blood. So it's oozing out of everybody in the bus. And then there's another pause, and everybody had the same expression. So everybody's in the same boat, sitting still, staring in front of them. So all of the people on the boat in the same condition. They've had a hard day at work, and they're looking kind of absolutely washed out. And it says Roswell stirred suddenly and unfastened the two top buttons of her coat. She almost felt stifled, strong word, which, you know, shows that she's absolutely overwhelmed by the conditions, the crowding, on top of the fact she's in a tired state, because the actual extract is called The Tiredness of Rosabelle. A lot of students don't recognize that on the cover page, and they should. Through half-closed eyes, the whole row of people on the opposite seat seemed to resolve into one meaningless staring face. Now, I've gone through that chronologically. Now, you can't write every single reference. So my feeling is you can develop a very simple technique. So you could you could start off at the beginning of this short extract. The writer uses pathetic fallacy to describe the misery with, and you don't need to say the word quote. I don't know why children often say the quote. You don't need to say the quote, you just give it, and you just take maybe that. So just quickly put that in there. I'll get rid of the just put that in a little bit of the street was blurry and misty. Now, when you're talking about language, you're trying to pick out elements, as they've said, words and phrases, language features and techniques and sentence forms. But what you need to do is kind of give an indication of how this works. So at the beginning of the short extra, the writer uses pathetic fallacy to describe the outside misery with the street was blurred and misty. Weather is often used to make things look a bit more dour. You know, giving us an impression of a tough day working and a tough life, something like that. So that could be your first paragraph. Now, what you want to do is kind of keep structuring your question. So we said it this one at the beginning. We can put there. So the next one we could do is, so as we do this, we could probably say, so as the extract moves on. So now we've got another little bit of a way of developing the next one, and then you could put furthermore. So we're going chronologically. Whoops, sorry about that. Just do that chronologically through, and then you put finally. See, the idea is if you do 4 paragraphs, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get 2 marks, aren't we? So so the way you get is to identify the language feature, technique, word, phrase, explain how it works and what the impact is. So there's 3 things to do. So let's just look at one more. We get, when we look at the phrase fairy palaces, so under furthermore, as Rosabelle settles into her journey home, she imagines, so let's just get rid of that bold. She imagines again fairy palaces. So fairy palaces. Just checking I'm spelling it all right. So just getting there. So first, Master Roswell says to Jam, she imagines fairy palaces, which writers' use of metaphor presents her thinking aspirational. Thinking about her aspirations to have a better life. Probably Roosevelt is a bit of a Cinderella. See, what I'm doing here is creating an idea, Cinderella character. Again, look at the length of what I've said as well as Citizen's Journey, Fairy Palaces, where the writer uses a use of metaphor presents her thinking about aspirations to have a better life. Probably Rosabelle. I put a semicolon, and then probably Rosabelle is a bit of a Cinderella character. So what we're trying to do is create again an impact, and again I would imagine that would get 2 marks because I've identified the technique, I've shown what this kind of creates in our minds, and then the impact. And then we go to So that would be as the extract. So I put that in the wrong one. So that should be, I did that a bit much. As the extract moves on, it should go there. Yeah, so it goes there, and then this one, we would do something else later. So in your own way, you can go through this yourself and create these type of structured answers. And you could pick, so if you look, street was blurry, fairy palaces, you might want to do the sickening smell of warm humanity, big phrase. And you might want to end into one meaningless staring face, giving what it's like traveling back on the bus with the people she's with. Okay, so that's one. Now let's go straight away to the next question. And this is language paper 2, and it's based on reality, and it's not fiction anymore, it's non-fiction. And look at the question: how does the writer use language to describe? And again, so you've already know in the exam order, it's always paper 1 that comes first. So you've been given advice in paper 1. By the time you get to paper 2, you should have learnt it. So this time, though, it says, how does the writer use language to describe the power of the sea? Now, that is a big understanding. It's not just say it would be very easy just to look at that as how does the writer use language to describe the sea, and it would be, you could go straight in and say what a vast wave, but actually does that show the power? Maybe soaring above the cabin, a wall of white water towering over the tiny boat is probably the first element of how does the writer use language to describe the power of the sea. And then you can go through many other things, the belly of the wave, and again the same thing. Now, if you look at this, this is now a 12-mark question. So what you could do is again use the same technique at the beginning as the extract moves on further more finely, but just write a wee bit more and a bit more of the impact, like a play on the letter W there, wall of white water, so emphasizing, and then you've got the word towering. But it's also taking the elements of words out. So you could say white water. Well, why not? If it's a wall of water, but white water, what's the difference? I mean, you could say the way the writer uses adds the word white next to water in alliteration, but that exaggerates the water is all messed up and frothing up. It must be an aggressive sea. And then the word towering is almost a personification of the wave, or likening it, I suppose, almost to a building that's very big. But towering is almost intimidating. So there's many, when we look at references, a wall of white water towering, it's very important to look at the individual words and suddenly describe the individual words in their entirety, one at a time. So you've got more to say. You know, if you say this one, it moved backwards and we were sucked into the belly of the wave. So sucked, that gives an impression of being vacuumed up. Belly of the wave means like you're being devoured. You know what I mean? So you look at the words, but again, all you do now is write the paragraphs in the same way. So you can use exactly the same technique, you know, and all of these, and you do them in question 3 as well. Now, so let's come out of that. Stop sharing that now. So look, let's come out of there and just come back into me talking to you there. So when you look at those 2 questions and you have a structure to it, it means that you start focusing on each point you're making in more detail. What happens is a lot of students jump around the text, pick out a phrase, then go back to something else, but it doesn't have any cohesion. It's not following a pattern, because you know it's like when a story progresses, it gets more intense. It builds up to a crescendo. So it's important to use. So the other things that that I wanted to quickly show you is where do all these ideas come from, and how can I help you in a way, or how can you help yourself? Well, one of the things that I'd like to just pick out, if I can find it, if it's there, I'm just going to pick up my guide. Right, so let's just go into, so I'm going to share my screen again now and just show you a folder. Hopefully there's, I'm just trying to find which window it's going to be on, to be honest. Let's go into another one. Hold on one sec. I'm just going to get, right, so let's go into this one. So I'm just loading up the booklet that you can actually purchase online if you so wish. That's just coming up now. Right, so it's coming up now. So I'm just going to go back into the sharing of screen. So this is, so you can purchase this booklet online, and it's a combined booklet one, and it's got over 100 odd pages in it. So it does all, it's a whole guide. It talks about the SMART method. This is where today I've taught you this part, how to structure your answers, which, you know, very, very important that you structure. And there's all other elements inside of this booklet about time management, goes over the cover pages. It sets out an exam strategy, what to do in what order. And that's paper one. And then right the way on, it will go on forever. Don't think I can get to it quickly enough, but this is all part of paper one, and then it goes into a second part, I think. Let me just find it. So this is still paper one. It goes all the way through. Yeah, and then we've got Adrian's revision secret is a 2 is attached to it, and you've got all that as well. So let's stop sharing that. Just come out of this for a second. Let's see what we're doing here. Just come out of there. Go back in here. So what we've got here is how to do the language questions by using a chronological structure, and then defining the technique you do. So the first thing is identify a phrase, technique, word, anything. Then how does it work? And then what's the impact? And if you take those 3 things on, you're going to get good marks. I mean, you basically per paragraph, you're trying to get 2 marks in the question 2, and in question 3, you're trying to get 3 marks. So you can go into a little bit more detail, but use that same strategy. The other thing that I'm trying to get people involved in is obviously being able to invite people to go to my shop. So I'm just going to share screen again and just see what comes up here. So I go to Chrome tab. There's a subscription tuition you can apply for here, which is this. This is where you go to my website and you can look at my GCSE club, and this is what you can get for your money, and you check it out. There's a link on this YouTube at the end, and see which one suits you. So you can get one-to-one tuition with me, not necessarily personally online like I'm talking now, but if you read the different levels, you'll find it's pretty good. So I come out of that. So the other one to look at is to go into, I'll just get up the other element of my website that you can look at as well. So I'm just going to go back to here. So I'll share my screen again, share it and see what comes here. Right, so you've got my So this is my website. For other things, you can go in here and you can go to the shop, which is something I mentioned earlier, where you can buy some guides. So you've got all the different types. The combined one is worth getting, this one here, and you just click on there, and it'll give you, let's just see, yeah, so it gives you a little overview, and then you can pay for it, etc, etc, etc. And last but not least, you can also, let's just come out of here, and last but not least, then you can also, let me just share my screen again. Let's just get it again. Let's get share up again and just show you something else you can look at, and that's my, so you can actually subscribe to my YouTube channel, and a lot of the things that I do are on here that you can look at, some tuition or adverts or whatever else, all about different things on there, but you can subscribe and that's free. So let's just come out of all of this now. So that has been the way that I think we can move forward. I'd love to hear from you guys about what you thought of this video, and hopefully it was some help to you. So get in touch. There'll be all sorts of contact details at the bottom of this video.